Something very interesting has started happening in the real estate market recently that has grabbed my attention. If you go to a site like Zillow and just browse through the homes for sale in your local area, you'll probably notice quite a few homes have recently had price cuts. And these price cuts aren't just like a few $100s or even a few $1,000s. No, most of these homes have cut their sale price by tens of thousands of dollars. And when I saw this, it got me thinking, we've already seen other markets crash this year, including the stock market, crypto market, and even physical assets like gold are down significantly. But through all of this, there's one thing that just seems like it's going to continue to go higher and higher. And no, I'm not talking about Snoop Dogg, but instead the real estate market.
Call me Snipe Dogg.
Real estate prices are higher than they have ever been before in history. But because the federal government continues to increase interest rates, this also means that mortgage rates are getting higher and higher as well. And so if you're somebody who's on the market right now to buy a home, not only are you having to deal with the historically high home prices, but you're also having to deal with increasing interest rates, which of course increases the mortgage rate, which could add hundreds of thousands of dollars to the cost of your home over the loan's lifetime. And because of this, people who would normally be on the market right now to buy a home have backed out because it's just become too expensive. And enough people have backed out that the demand for homes is starting to decrease. However, we're still not completely out of the clear because remember, we still technically have a housing shortage. That is, there are more people trying to buy a home than there are actual homes for sale. But is that enough to hold up the real estate market and continue this upward trend of historically high home prices, or will the real estate market come crashing down at some point in the near future? In today's video, I'm going to answer that question using some really interesting data that I recently found. And a little bit later on in the video, I want to discuss with you some ways that you can buy real estate even if you don't think you can afford it. Because believe it or not, well, believe it because it's true, there's actually a way for you to buy real estate with as little as 0% down. I know that sounds like a used car commercial, but I promise you it is a completely legitimate thing. And then finally, toward the end of the video, I want to show you guys this really cool map that I found that shows you the average salary that you need to buy a home in 50 major cities across the US. And you'll be able to reference this map to kind of get a general idea of where you stand financially if you're on the market to buy a home. So what exactly is going on with the real estate market right now? Is it going to continue to go up? Is it going to crash? And how exactly is this all going to affect you? So for starters, the price of real estate is the highest it's ever been in history. The average sale price of houses sold in the US is currently sitting at about $525,000. Just to kind of put that into perspective, just 10 years ago, the average sale price of a home was only about $282,000. So within a 10-year period, the cost of homes has jumped nearly 85%. Now, historically, this actually isn't that big of a deal because we can look back over the past like 50 years and see several decades of time where the price of real estate actually jumped way more than 85%. For example, between 1970 and 1980, the price of real estate jumped 172%. But the reason that this 85% is so significant is because of all the other economic factors at play. On top of sky-high home prices, we're also dealing with record high inflation, which of course is being followed up with the federal government increasing interest rates, which by the way, they're expected to do again come September. And these increased interest rates have a direct effect on mortgage rates. And so because interest rates are increasing, mortgage rates are increasing as well. And so on top of the already expensive cost of real estate, we're also having to deal with the added costs from the higher mortgage rates. Now, you may be thinking, okay, so mortgage rates are increasing, so what? How is that gonna affect me? Well, it's not really gonna affect you unless you're actually on the market to buy a house. So back in June, mortgage rates hit a high of 5.81% on a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. And just recently, mortgage rates fell to 4.99% on a 30-year fixed rate. Now, this is only a 0.82% difference, right? Less than 1%. However, this difference in mortgage rate over a 30-year period on a $300,000 home would be the difference of you paying $334,000 in total interest over the 30-year loan period versus paying $279,000. And so just by the mortgage rate being 0.82% higher, you're paying $55,000 more for the same exact house because of the higher mortgage rate. And because of of this, it also means that your monthly mortgage payment is going to be higher as well. For example, if you bought a $300,000 home back in June with a 5.81% mortgage rate, then your estimated monthly payment for that mortgage is going to be about $1,762. However, if you bought that same exact home for $300,000 in August when your interest rate was 4.99%, then your monthly payment on that mortgage decreases to $1,609 as opposed to $1,762. And so when you combine these high mortgage rates with the already existing high cost of real estate at the moment, it's no wonder that Americans can't afford to buy a house. And if you combine that with the high unemployment happening in America right now, both voluntarily through the Great Resignation and involuntarily through fears of the recession, then it kind of makes you wonder, why are homes still so expensive? I mean, according to Zillow, a typical mortgage is 75% higher today than it was in June 2019. Shouldn't everything that's happening over the past year in the markets cause the demand for real estate to decrease, which in turn would cause the prices to also decrease? Well, as of recently, although we aren't seeing a 2008-like housing market crash, the housing market is definitely cooling down and showing major signs of pulling back. We've already began seeing listing prices being cut across the nation. In fact, according to Realtor.com, about 1 in 7 homes listed on the market had a price reduction in June, which is nearly double the rate of 1 in 13 homes from a year ago. And on top of that, according to Realtor.com, homes are taking longer to sell and staying on the market longer than they were just 2 years ago. Now, granted, it's only 1 day longer, but this isn't a coincidence and it does represent a shift in the market. Now, again, are we gonna see a 2008-like housing market crash? I personally highly doubt it. For starters, don't forget there is still a housing shortage. There are far more people looking to buy a home than there are actual homes for sale on the market. But in the 2000s, this wasn't the case. And so for the most part, even if the average cost of a home pulls back maybe 20 to 30% over the next few years, I personally just do not see the price of homes going back to what they were in the 2010s. I mean, if you look at the historical price of real estate over the past, say, 50, 60 years, you can see that the price of real estate, very similar to the stock market, is always going up. Now, yes, there are periods of pullback like in 2008, but it never pulls back so much that the price of real estate goes back to what it was a decade previously. And so while I do think that the real estate market is going to pull back about 20 to 30%, I don't think that the price of real estate will ever be what it was in the 2010s. And so now that brings up another point. If you want to buy a home, but you can't because the cost of real estate is too high, what can you do? Well, the first thing that you should do is ignore the articles that say you need $66,000 worth of income and a 10% down payment to qualify for a mortgage. When my wife and I first bought our home back in 2019, we used her income to qualify for the mortgage. And at the time, she was only making about $24,000 per year. Now, granted, we didn't have a car payment. We didn't have any credit card debt. We had a little bit of money saved up. However, we were still able to qualify for a mortgage even on her very low salary. Now, I already know what some of you are thinking. Yeah, but you put down 20% on the house, Joshua. That's how you were able to qualify for the mortgage with such a low salary. But that's actually not true. We only ended up putting down 5% on the property. And if we wanted to, we could have put down as little as 3% and still gotten the mortgage because we were first-time home buyers. And even if we couldn't have qualified for a conventional mortgage, there were still plenty of other options that we could have used to still purchase a home. And so if you're on the market to buy a home, but you're not quite sure that you can actually afford one, I want you to consider these options. The first option that you should consider is taking out what's called a USDA mortgage. This is a type of mortgage that allows people with either low or moderate income levels to buy homes in rural or suburban areas with as much as 100% financing available by the government. In other words, with a USDA loan, you don't have to put any money down to buy a house. Now, this mortgage does come with some requirements. The first one is that you need to buy a home in an eligible rural or suburban area. Also, your combined household income cannot exceed 115% of your area's median household income. And so, for example, if the area that you're trying to buy a house in has a median household income of, say, $35,000, but you make $75,000 per year, then you're likely not going to be eligible for a USDA loan because you make too much money. You'll also need a minimum credit score of 640 and a debt to income ratio of at least 41%. And your debt to income ratio is simply all of your monthly debt payments, for example, like your rent, if you have a car payment, if you have student loans, all of your debt payment divided by your monthly gross income. Another option to consider are VA mortgages, which also typically have 0% down, which means you can buy a house even if you don't have much in savings. VA loans are backed by the Department of Veteran Affairs and will typically offer you, the lender, much better terms, such as no down payment, no mortgage insurance, and much more lenient DTI and credit requirements. Now, you can only be eligible for a VA loan if you have served in the military or are currently serving, or if you are a surviving spouse of somebody who has served in the military. Now, another very popular type of mortgage and a much more common one is an FHA loan. These loans are backed by the Federal Housing Administration and have significantly more lenient terms that can help you to buy a house even if you have a low salary and a poor credit history. The credit score requirements for an FHA loan can start as low as 580, and the minimum down payment can be as low as a 3.5%. And the debt to income ratio for these types of loans will typically be around a 43%. Additionally, these types of loans can even offer lower closing costs. Now, if you can't qualify for a USDA loan or a VA loan, chances are you will be eligible for an FHA loan. So definitely do some research to figure out which of these options is going to be best for you. Now, if you're a first-time home buyer, then you could qualify for a conventional mortgage even if you don't think that you can. A huge misconception about conventional mortgages is that you need to put down a minimum 20% to buy a house, but that's simply not true. Especially if you're a first-time home buyer, you may be able to buy a home with as little as 3% down. For example, if you were buying a home for $350,000, that means that you would only have to put down about $10,500. That is significantly more affordable than what most people would assume, which would be putting down 20%, which would mean that you would have to save around $70,000 to buy a $350,000 home. Now, I'd like to talk with you guys about this map right here. This map is from visualcapitalist.com, and I'll include a link down below for you to look at it for yourself if you'd like. But it basically just shows the estimated salary that you would need to buy a home in 50 major US cities. Now, like we just talked about, the cost of home ownership doesn't necessarily have to be so expensive that you can't afford it, and you don't need to have a massive salary just. However, this map will at least give you a general idea of what to expect depending on where you live, and I think it's pretty accurate. For example, we can see that many of the cities in California, San Jose, San Francisco, San Diego, Los Angeles, all of these cities will likely require that you have a six-figure salary to buy a home, which makes sense considering that the cost of homes in these areas are extremely high compared to somewhere like Pittsburgh or Cincinnati, which will have significantly cheaper housing that requires a smaller salary. If you have not already gotten your 12 free stocks from Webull valued up to $30,000, then click on the link down below. Also, if you want future access to free courses and other personal finance and money-making resources, then go to mayouniversity.com and enter your email. It's 100% free. You guys are absolutely amazing. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and as always, I will see you again very soon. Take care.